Hello, everyone, and welcome to Only 2MG Inside the Crisis. My name is Brian Townsend, and I'm your host. Our next guest is Paul Choate. I met Paul through Mike, I believe, Mike and maybe even Mandy.
Mandy.
Yeah, and came out to the church last year and said a few remarks and got to hear Paul speak and instantly saw his passion and found his history interesting and really wanted to dive deeper into that today and talk about that and now what he's doing to help people and make a change in this world. So, Paul, thanks for agreeing to come on and excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us. Let's just get right back to you. Let's go to the past. Young Paul. Let's talk about young Paul.
Okay, so for me, I always say, man, I grew up in probably one of the biggest drug houses in Springfield. My uncle was he was an outlaw. Um, he always lived at my mom's house, and he was a real dangerous guy. I recall, at a young age, the house getting kicked in, the police running in looking for him all the time. Unfortunately, when I was 7 years old, he got killed. He got killed by a Springfield police officer. It was common for us to see people shooting dope. Of course, back then they was doing what they called teas and blues. And, my uncle was just a party. And my mom also, she used drugs. Around the age of 5, my mom started dating this guy who was my uncle's best friend. And so it was just, just crazy. There was 8 of us kids just blended, like his kids and her kids. And so, growing up, man, like for me, I was a straight A student, honor roll student. I love sports. I played sports, real active in all of it. When my uncle got killed, everything in my world just kind of flipped. He was just like this guy, and I'm not just saying it because he's my uncle, but he was just a guy that everybody just was obsessed with. They loved him, and but he was a top flight criminal, man. He had been certified as a kid, and so just after that, my stepfather went to prison. Um, come home from
How old were
prison.
you? I'm sorry. How old were you when your uncle
I was
died?
7 years old.
7. Okay. Okay.
Yes, I was 7. His son, Rocky, which is part of the huge passion, and we'll get into that. Um, me and his son, we grew up together. We was both 7 years old when this happened. Um, and so life kind of got crazy. My uncle gets killed. My stepdad goes to prison. It's me and my mom and my sister. And so as time went on, I continued to play sports, and he came home from prison and swore off drugs. That was in 79. So I was 9 years old when he came home. Uh, he got a job. My mom had a job. They both worked. I continued to go to school. My older sister spent a lot of time living at my grandma's. Life for me was weird because I grew up around a bunch of bikers. I always say bikers and Klansmen, man, because I came from what was then a real racist family. My mom's got 11 brothers and sisters, and they was raised that way. And here I come, and then right behind me, I got some cousins that are mixed as well, and so it was kind of odd growing up. I knew what racism looked like at a young age. Bikers, all of that. Predominantly white schools, white neighborhoods. That's just the people I grew up around. And as
You
life,
saw the drugs. You said your mom too was involved in drug use
yeah,
as
she
well, or?
used drugs as well. And she always doesn't like for me to talk about these things because I've said before, when my stepfather was in jail, we would go see him, and they thought they would let me go in the cell with him and lock me in, or go around the window and sit on his lap. And, they was like, oh, he's just here to see his dad's abs. I was actually there to bring him drugs. I knew how to move drugs at a very young age. But I just thought that was what was normal to me. And then when he got out of prison, all that stuff was out the window, man. Like they didn't use drugs. They smoked pot. most of my life. And he just continued to teach us, work, do this, do that, and he got a job. He buried phone cable for Southwestern Bell for, I don't know, 40 years. Um, Obviously my biological father wasn't in my life, and I don't know. There's a lot of reasons it could have been. Ultimately, I believe that, he didn't have that option. Um, my mom's brothers was dangerous, and whether he could come in or whatever, you get older and you hear so many different things, and it's like, what is the truth here? Um, and he ended up dying in 1999 in a car accident. So, as far as being a father figure, he really wasn't that for me. Um, my stepfather was, and he was my role model. He's still my role model today. And, I love the guy to death. He'd be 80 years old tomorrow.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. 80.
when I started at about 8 or 9, I started smoking weed um,
Okay.
with my older brother. Uh, so as that went on, he, after school, I'd go to him and we'd smoke weed together. I'd smoke with him and his buddies, and I got a little older, and then I started stealing joints from home, and me and my buddies would smoke, in the 6th grade, on the way to school, on the way home, whatever, in junior high school. We moved away from Springfield in my 6th grade year. We lived up in Jeff City. My stepfather worked at that nuclear power plant up there. We was there for a couple years, which I always say, man, if we'd have never came back to Springfield, my life would look different. I was just, I was a star. You know what I mean? I played sports. I mean, I did all that. That's all I cared about. And so we moved back to Springfield, and immediately it was all my friends that from before. And so in between the 8th and 9th grade, I started shooting dope. I started shooting meth. By this point, I had decided in my mind that I was going to be the guy. Me and my cousin would be the ones to correct this behavior uh, with this officer. We was going to be the one to go after him. We hated his guts, and somebody had to torment this guy for what he had done to my mom and my family. And I believe that for the biggest part of my life, that was going to be how it was going to end out. And so I got locked up for a robbery, went to DYS, got out, uh, turned right around and got locked up for a string of burglaries, got locked right back up, got out, got certified, got hit with a whole bunch of burglaries. I started to learn that, you know, uh, I was a good thief, man. And, I knew everybody I needed to know to sell this stuff. And, when I was 14 years old, I had a car, so I could drive around, and we just burglaries and stealing. And that's all we did 24 hours a day. Around the age of 15 or 16, I met Mark Deeds. There was a burglary out on the west side of Springfield, and he was the one that ended up pulling us over and arresting all of us. That was my first. And I need to say this because this is going to be real important towards the end of this. That this name is going to be a name that I talk about a lot. Mark was a cop who was about getting it done. Once he became in this city, he was just that guy. Everybody that knows him knows that. And so, man, I got certified, went to prison, burglary, escape, and receiving stolen property the first time.
Let me back you up real quick.
Okay.
Couple things. When you say certified, I just want to make sure other people know you went certified as an adult,
Yeah.
but you went to adult prison. You were
Well,
what, 15, 16 years old,
no,
or am
I
I
didn't
thinking
they
about that?
certified me when they released me off of aftercare.
Okay,
Um, if I got any more trouble at that point, it would be in the grown up court.
I got you now.
And
Okay,
so
yeah, makes
they
sense. Okay,
certified me. I didn't go to prison for some years after that. But every case I caught was a state case. You know,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
when I
that
went to
makes sense.
jail, I
So,
went to Greene County. I didn't go to juvenile detention anymore.
and you were what, 15-ish, 14, 15,
I would
16?
say I was 16. You know,
Okay.
and
So
so
early on, you're around, like you said, people involved in drugs, criminal activity. You're seeing racism. You're seeing a lot of just really messed up stuff early on in life. And like I said, you didn't have nothing to compare it to, right? You're 5, 6, 7 years old, and this is normal to you, right? And
this is normal to me, man.
wow, and then you start with the marijuana, and then it turns into methamphetamine, and then you start your criminal activity starts more with the burglaries and the robberies, things like that. Was that to fuel drugs, or was that to just buy stuff? Was it a little everything?
You
What
know,
was
one thing I struggle with in, recovery, and I just want to say before we get off into this, I am not a recovery guy. Um, they say people get high to cover up. And I believe that that's a misconception for some people. For me, like I said, I didn't even know who I was or where I fit in. I live in a predominantly white world. Everybody around me is white, all of my friends, my family. And so where do I fit in? Well, the thing about drugs is what's the only thing that matters in the drug world? Do you
getting
got
high, right?
drugs? Are you willing to
Yeah.
get drugs? And do you know how we can go about, you know what I mean? And that was all that mattered. And
Do you
I,
feel like go ahead, no, go ahead, play. Yeah,
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, do you feel like you said you were sports was a great, you were good at sports. It was a great uh, uh, thing for you to do as opposed to the drugs or the crime. What was it about sports was what drew you to, I mean, other than just being, like you said, being good, but anything draw you to that? Did it look like a different life to you, or
In sports, my older brother, he loved to play basketball, and I guess my stepbrother. I call him my stepbrother, but he's my brother. His dad and my mom's been together since I was 5 years old, and I'm 55 now. Excuse me. And so he played basketball, and I'd been playing basketball most of my life, but we played outside together against each other all day long. And I just had a huge passion for that in baseball. And I was good at them. I went above and beyond anywhere I went, I just loved to play basketball, man. And through my whole life, I'd go to prison, and it was sports, man. That's all I did.
okay? I didn't know if there was. Yeah, I got you. Okay, so you're a teenager, and like you said, you're catching these state charges, and carry us on from there.
And so for me, I had to go above and beyond all of my friends, right? They would do certain things, but I was willing to do what nobody else would do. You can't rob that place. Well, I was the guy that would do it just because nobody else. And so in the world that I was in, um, I became, I boxed, I did all of that. And so I was a fighter. Obviously growing up in Springfield is we would be in parties, and I'd be the only black guy there. And I learned really quick that it would be two guys get into it, two white guys, and all of a sudden it'd be turn on a black guy. And all of a sudden now I'm the one fighting, and this don't, you know what I mean? And so fighting was something that I learned at a real young age, and I was good at it. Um, and it didn't matter. I would fight anybody, anytime, anywhere, any place. And sometimes people just didn't have a choice whether or not they was going to fight me. It was just going to happen. you know, moving forward, it was just burglary after burglary, and I went to prison. And so when I went to prison, I think I was 17. And you talk about a lost person. I get to prison. You got this mixed kid that's light skinned with long hair, and it wasn't like it is now. Now there's so many guys there from Springfield. Well, when I was growing up, coming in prison, it was different, and it was dark. It was very dark. There was maybe one or two white guys to a wing. Well, the people that I was used to being around was white people. And so all the black guys would look at me like, this dude's weird. Where does he come from? And, but the thing was, I could move drugs into prison. I knew how to deal with the administration and get ahead of them. And I just started to learn them things while I was in prison. My first prison sentence really, it taught me that prison really wasn't that bad. I seen guys that had it bad, but I didn't have it bad because I people sent me money all the time, and I had everything I wanted or needed. And of course, at that point I was smoking weed, and I was moving drugs through the visiting room and through work release and whatever. Um, but I learned, wow, I can make just as much money in here as I can out there, and I lived as good in prison as anybody could. And so it wasn't a thing that I just turned away from. I've seen people go to prison and say, I'm never going back and never go back. My mindset when I came out was this is going to be a part of my life because I'm not going to stop. I didn't get drug. I got high because I like to get high. I wasn't abused as a kid. I wasn't any of that. I just was a guy that loved to get high. And by the time I came home from prison, I think I was about 21 or 22. And what I learned was, I learned that I was black. Okay. Um, Going in, I wasn't sure, you know what I mean? Of course, all of my friends was white and they accepted me. Even though they didn't deal with other black people, I was different. Well, when I got to prison, I realized that I found out that I wasn't any different. I was just like the other guys. Um, it was a rough time, my first prison bit. I fought a lot, but there just come a time when people was like, man, it ain't even, that dude's an idiot, you know, cause I didn't know when to quit. I would just take off on them guys all the time. And so, I got home from prison. And I don't think that my plan was ever to stop getting high. My goal was to get home and get probation and parole off my back so I could get back to what I love to do. Obviously, I became a gang member while in prison. I was a member of the Bloods. Um, I came back home from prison and recruited. I've got a pretty big family. Like I told you, my mom's got 11 brothers and sisters, and all of them's got kids. I've been a leader most of my life. People have followed me. People will follow me to the dark side, and they'll also follow me to the light. That's one thing that I've learned. So when I get home from prison, all my cousins that are a couple of years younger than me are like, yeah, what's up? And I'm like, you know, what's up? This is Blood Gang. And so our neighborhood became that. So we did that for a few years before I went back to prison. I went back to prison, I think in 94 to 98. I got out in 98. During that time, they started cooking methamphetamines around here. I got out of prison, November, I think, of 98. And the day I got out of prison, somebody took me out in the woods and taught me how to cook dope. I came out of the woods the next morning with a couple pounds of dope, you know, and I thought, wow, I can cook my drugs. I don't even have to go steal no more to hustle. I don't have to do any of that. I got it right here. I can cook it myself. And so I did that. And I got sent back to prison in 99. Actually, I left Missouri, jumped bond, went to Indianapolis. I was the first person to get arrested in Indiana for cooking drugs. They didn't know how to charge me. This was new to them. And so they ended up on a 2.5-hour high-speed chase. You know, I had a 21 count indictment back here in Missouri. They had me up there, and so I dealt with that case up there, and they sent me back to Missouri. I was sentenced to about 101 years. Went to prison. Fought. Never understood why. My sentences was ran consecutive. They wasn't supposed to be. But when I got to prison, they was. It was only supposed to be 10 years. But we ended up getting it down to 12. And so I ended up doing 9 or 10 years. And you know, I
State
had a,
state prison.
yeah. Oh yeah. All state. I never went to the federal prison.
Okay.
And so I had a guy tell me one time when I was young, you're going to spend the biggest part of your life in prison. So let me help you. Let me show you how to do your time the most comfortable way. And so he did. You know, the guy had been locked up since 1969. His name was Red Dotson. He was a killer. He was a killer in prison. He was a killer on the streets before he went to prison. This is in the early 90s. And he told me, he said, you got to start taking these classes. And I'm like, all right, man. So I do. I just, you know, like, I'm like that still, you know, the counsel in my life. And so the counsel in my life in prison was guys who had been in prison for multiple years. And so they ended up taking these programs, and then you start facilitating them, and then you start getting on these inmate committees, and now you're rubbing elbows with the administration, right? So now I've got a little pull with the administration, right?
Were
So
you doing this for legitimate? Like you wanted to do better there? Or were you doing this to kind of
uh,
game the system a little bit?
this was a game.
Okay. I'm listening.
And so the goal is he who controls the administration controls the yard.
Sure. Okay.
You see what I'm saying? And so
Absolutely.
I was the guy writing programs and starting programs and creating programs and going from prison to prison, starting therapeutic communities. And so I done all of them things, right? So the administration looked at me like I was 6 foot tall and bulletproof. I wasn't doing nothing. And all the time I was the guy with all the drugs on the yard. They didn't know that. And so I would get staff and whatever. I would move my drugs through staff. Give me 2 weeks at any prison and I'll have a staff member bringing me drugs in, I promise. And I learned that really quick. And, um, it gave me complete control of the yard because if somebody went to the hole or had a violation, I could go talk to the people and get it thrown out or get them out of the hole or whatever, and so, um, there was times that they labeled me the most dangerous guy in the prisons, not because I was killing people, but because I got along with every organization except for Crips on the yard, the Aryan Brotherhood, Aryan Christian, you name it. I was cool with all of them. And, and so moving forward, I got out of prison. I think I was about 38 years old. And I came home and I was like, I never, man, I've believed in God my whole life. I just never was ready to surrender my life to that. And I never said I'm going to come home and go to church and I'm going to figure this thing out. I think you met my pastor, Scott. He's a huge part of my life, has been since the first time I came home from prison. I still today, I tell him, dude, you got more staying power than anybody ever seen in my life. Because, most people they've been telling him for years, you're an idiot. Why do you keep standing by this guy? And he's like, I don't know. And, his kids call me uncle and, we've just been the very best of friends. And in the darkest times of my life, he always knew I would stay in touch with him. Like, hey, dude, what's up? I'm good. Yeah, it's bad, but I'm good. I'm alive. Um, and I'd go to prison, and he'd write me and I take phone calls and we just stayed in touch all of these years. And I think now we've been friends since 89 or something. Uh, he's just always believed in me. And, it has a lot to do with where I stand in my walk today with people. And so I got out of prison, went back, got out of prison. This last time I got out in 2013, I had a 14-year backup. Did long-term treatment, came home. Immediately went on the run. I was on the run from 2014 to 2017 before they caught me. Uh, my parents put their house up, to get me out, and I jumped bond anyway. And, um, dude, I become suicidal. I wanted to kill myself. And, I knew then that something had to change. And so, man, I got arrested and they took me to jail. I guess that was the end of 2016. And I went in the rec room to laugh at some guys over a prayer circle, man. And I don't know, man, I come out of there in tears. And, one of my buddies said, what happened? I said, man, I think I just found God or he found me or something just happened. I don't know what it is. And I got out of jail and just like everybody else, I left my Bible there, went back right out in the streets and took off right again, cut my ankle monitor off. I didn't cut it off. I actually took it apart with a screwdriver so I wouldn't have to pay $5,000 for it. And so, so, they finally caught me. And, at that time I was sitting in a truck with AK-47 in my head. I just wanted to end it. I had a 6-month-old baby. I'm 47 years old. You know what I mean? And like, God, what is this, man? I can't do this. I can't go back to prison. I know I got 14 years and I just surrendered my life, man. And sitting in Greene County Jail, them 6 months, I was there 6 months. And man, I seen God's grace in the courtroom. The judge reinstated my probation with 6 new felony charges. And they offered me 5 years. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Let's go. And so I was all the way in. And of course, I came home from prison in 2020. And, man, I've been convicted of 33 felonies. 8
3.
years,
Wow.
33, 28 and a half years in prison, 36 years with a needle hanging out of my arm. I started shooting dope. Well, actually, I started shooting dope in 1983. I haven't used drugs today since July 15th, 2017.
Wow.
Never been
Congratulations.
clean never been clean 8 years of my whole life.
So you hit the dark place. You said suicidal and just things aren't going right. Was it was it just a was it just a look at your life? What kind of put you there?
Kajay, which is my youngest, I've got 3 kids. I got 2 that's 30 years old and they're 8 days apart. And At this time, my son won't have anything to do with me. My daughter's strung out on drugs. My oldest daughter. I got a baby, a brand new baby at home. I'm finna go back to prison. I'm thinking for at least 10 or 15 years, and I'm just like, man, I can't be a father. I can't even go home to my mama's house. There's no need to go on. I don't spend the rest of my life in prison, man. I didn't. The only option I felt like at that point was suicide, man.
And then you saw, like you said, the grace of God, and things happen pretty quick, it sounded like, where
It it happened fast, and it was you know how when you first start reading the Bible, like it makes a lot. It don't really make no sense sometimes, and I tell people all the time, man, the Bible's boring. You got to figure out how to make it fun sometimes, it's like, man, this is brutal. Um, it was just so clear to me, the presence of God in my life at that time. As soon as I got locked up, I mean, it was just like, I remember the lady at the desk said, "You want to make a call?" I said, "No, I need a Bible." And man, it was a blessing. It made all the sense in the world to me.
and early on, it wasn't, you know, "I'm gonna put this face on and, play pretend," and did you feel like it was to your in the heart early on?
When I surrendered my life that day in the pit at Greene County Jail, I knew 100% for sure that my life was getting ready to change. How, I didn't know, but I knew that I had tried everything, 12 steps, recovery programs, this, smart recovery, da 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 da, all of this stuff. It never works. It works for a while, but there was just, people tell me a lot of times, like, "Hey man, I've been clean 8 months and I'm more miserable than I was when I was getting high." And I'm like, really? Where's God
So
at in all this?
yeah. So you were going through the treatment through probably through the jails and stuff, the
Every bit of it, man.
every bit of it, and then but the relapse, like, was pretty much all the time.
You got to be in recovery to be in relapse,
I got you. It's fair.
you know?
Um, wow, okay, so you're in Greene County, and this is 2017-ish, you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And, you knew that God would be in your life. You didn't kinda know the whole picture yet, but it was enough for you to say, "I'm gonna walk away from." Now, is this just meth and marijuana? Was it m meth, cocaine, heroin? What?
No, I was a meth addict. I'd
Yeah,
never
okay,
liked opiates. I did heroin when I was young, 22, 21 years old. And like, that was not me. That was definitely not what I was looking for.
I
And I know
gotcha.
people
So,
do
yeah,
everything. Yeah, there's people that they're all over the place with it, and I'm not. You know,
yeah. So,
I
in
always
and
say,
out.
man,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, good. No, no, please, you'd say what?
Yeah, I know people that do speed and do opiates and do this, and I just never could. I was never that guy. Like, I didn't mind staying up 3 or 4 weeks, but I definitely didn't want to sit around nodding all day.
Yeah,
Um, I
yeah, much
specialized in
different.
running from the police. That was my specialty. I was about high speed chases. I loved being on the run. I loved every bit of it. And Mark Dees will tell you, and, through it all, when I surrendered my life, um, everybody would come to jail and I know, I told Scott, I said, man, don't tell nobody what I've done. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to, they've heard it all these years in prison. I'm gonna come home, try harder. I'm gonna run faster. I'm gonna do better. And, I knew when I came home this time, I was a different man. Even in prison, I was a completely different man. And I didn't want to go to prison and talk about God because everybody in prison knows me as the guy who always had drugs. Every institution I went at, just give me a couple of weeks and I'll figure it out. You know, um, Poker tables, all of that stuff was out the window when I went back this time. And dudes was just like, man, what is up with you? And I said, man, I don't live that life no more, man.
So it was
It's
an overnight transformation. You were done.
I was done. And when I came home from prison, I told Scott, I said, man, I don't know if River Bluff is where I'll be because they may not want to do what I need to do. And he said, well, what's that? And I said, get outside the walls of this church, man. We can sit in the church building and talk church all day long. Promise you. But what about these people out here? Ain't nobody talking to. That's what I care about. And so they've proven me wrong. You know, we've got a congregation of 250 or 300 people, and they, any outreach, 100 of them will show up, and that's pretty good numbers for a church. Obviously, Mark Deeds, we go to church together. Mark LaRose, Troy Murdoch, Mandy Britton. Um, you could have never told me that the council and the people in my life would have been them, especially them four right there, Jim Farrell. Like, who does that?
Wow. So folks listening, those are all pretty much all law enforcement professionals or connected to the law enforcement or criminal justice work in some way or another. So now that you are in church with these folks and you're connecting,
Yeah.
or it's
Um,
no longer I hate you, I'm going to
yeah.
run from you.
It-
It's there's a
you know,
legitimate connection there.
Mark and I don't know, man, for me and Mark, I met him in 1985. And so when I seen him in church, and we didn't have any clue what this thing was going to look like with us together in church. You know what I mean? Like, and I think I can speak for Mark when I say, his son has had some situations, and Mark said, call Paul. You need to talk to Paul. After Mark spent his life trying to protect his family from me, because you know how cops are. They're pretty jaded and they live in a bubble. Everything in their world is the next case. They don't get outside of that. And so Mark and I have become, the very best of friends. I know I've been to his house. He went to Omaha, Nebraska with us last year on a mission trip. He always says that I'm the one that pushes his faith and made his faith stronger. But I always say God has used him and these other people, for us to bridge a gap. I never hated cops. I mean, I did, but one cop, that killed my uncle. But all of that went out the window. And so, I don't know if you met Brooks. I think you might have met Brooks last year. Um, we started having a vision of a ministry. And last year, I guess, for years, everybody kept going, when you going to start preaching? Where are you going to preach at? And I'm like, man, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know that I'm called out for that. And so we just started doing outreaches. We did the one last year, the one you seen. And at that time, we had started doing services at a church over in the central west end of town. We did it every other week. Every Saturday when we opened up would be over 300 people. And it's because of the respect that I got in this community, in the underworld. And now on the other side, they respect me. The courts respect me. And so we started a ministry called Living Proof Ministries. Because
Living Proof Ministries. Okay.
yeah, and we believe that we are living proof that there is a God. Um, right around the time I met you, we was at that church for 3 months, and we had agreed to be there for a season. And it was so crazy because when it was time for us to leave there, I get a message on a Sunday morning from a guy and says, we want you to come look at our church. And so we go over there, at Hope and Anchor Church over on College, and we walk in, and it's an old church, and it's it's nice. And he says, man, we want recovery ministry brought here. And we're like, okay. So we went to our board and we prayed about it and talked about it. And we felt like God was drawing us there. But the only thing that was going to be different was we was going to go once a week. We was going to go every Saturday, and we was going to feed. And, at the time we're going, okay, we don't know what this is going to look like, man. And we continue to run anywhere from it could be 200 people there on a Saturday night. It might be 150. We cook enough food for 150 people every week, and we run out of food every week. How we've been able to do it. Brooks and I, we did it out of our pocket for the longest time. He preaches one Saturday, I preach the next Saturday. And so we just keep going back and forth. Every couple of months, he'll take one off and I'll take one off, just so we don't get burnt out. And so outreaches. We do them all over the place. We're getting ready to do one downtown at First Baptist. We're going to do a street church in their parking lot. We're going to knock on doors. We're going to share what God's done in our lives with people. We've got a women's house. We've got a men's house. The men's house is actually my house, and all the men that live in my house work at the same company I worked for. And now I work for CMC. I don't drive a truck anymore, and I sit over a trucking fleet now. I don't know, dude. I don't know how it happened. I just don't. I mean, it's all God. God's put me in a position where with a company that teaches um, based off of biblical principles. We have prayer meetings every morning. You catch guys around here all the time. We've got 8 shops in Springfield. We're building a huge, massive campus out here by the airport. We build 7 brew coffee shops. By the end of the year, we'll be rolling out these Walmart stores that are 60-foot long and 40-foot wide. And it's crazy because I sit here today and it's like, I kind of been laughing at everybody because yesterday they called me and they're like, go get this truck. And I'm like, okay. They give me a blank check signed. It's a multi-million-dollar company. And all the way up to Fayetteville yesterday, I'm thinking, wow, they really gave me a blank check. Cause there was a time when I'd have abused that check, and today people trust me. And so we just believe that with Living Proof, man, we do go in homeless camps every Saturday. Mandy Britton is probably one of our biggest fans. She comes out there. It blows my mind. I love Mandy, and,
She's
I
got a
don't
big
know
heart.
how,
Sure.
I just don't, I met Mandy at church. Um, Her brother-in-law, Scott's brother, was a CO at OCC. And he calls me out one night and he says, I think we got a mutual friend. And I said, we do. Because I didn't like him. I thought he was a butthole. And he goes, yeah. Does the name Mark Deeds mean anything to you? And I'm like, what? And so it's funny because even last year, I didn't get to work the golf course tournament this year because we was in Omaha. But, you go out there and there's a bunch of law enforcement there, dude.
Yeah,
And,
I
and I
played
always
this
sit
year.
back and I'm like, how does this happen? You know?
Let me pause you for a minute. Mandy's husband Scott unfortunately lost his life to cancer, and she started a
Yeah.
501c3 nonprofit called the Scott Britton Foundation. And
Yes.
every year he does various fundraisers, like the golf tournament that I just played in. I don't know
Did
if you
you?
can call. I don't know if you can call what I do play. I just kind of swing the clubs, but anyway, I
Right.
digress. She raises money for first responders and families that are struggling with various things, and yeah, she's got a big heart. And now that I think of it, yeah, she was the one that told me, says, you gotta meet this guy named Paul. Like he's got a big heart. He's really trying to help people, and he crazy past, and
Yeah.
and
It
two,
is,
two
man.
different
Cause
two different ways. What's that?
yeah, after all the stealing and all that, Convoy of Hope donates 8 trucks a year to me
Yeah. Wow.
of food. And some people would take that food and go try to sell it or do whatever, man. You was there last year. I mean, we're in a week from Saturday, we'll have 2 truckloads of food on the ground up there,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
amazing. So the parking lot's just full of different stations of just crates and crates of food, and cars will roll up and the windows will roll down and people are just surfing them, and it's pretty special to see. It really is.
It's
And just
it man,
communities, people help people, not black, not white, not police officer, not police officer. It's
right.
just people helping people, right? I mean, it's an incredible thing to see.
Well, here's the thing. When the majority of people look at other people, right? What do they see? And they see addiction. I don't. I see a solution. And when I say that, I think about my life growing up, not fitting in, going above and beyond, gangs, all of that stuff. And so, um, people use drugs for a solution, man. And I will never stop believing that because see, everybody's so caught up on the addiction side of it. But I don't even know that that's the problem. The problem, I believe, lies on the other side of that. And I think that when the community stops looking at these people, see the thing about fentanyl, and so I want to touch on this because I know that that's your thing. I've never used it. When I came home from prison in 2020, I started realizing all these people. I've been around people shooting heroin all my life. I used to watch guys fall out in prison all the time, and they just take some ice and put it on their midsection and bring them back. They didn't die like that. Then all of a sudden, I get out of prison and everybody's using fentanyl and they're dying. I mean, it's bad. And I guess I was home 3 months, maybe, and they found my sister in a hotel up here dead. One of my younger sisters overdosed. Couple months later, my cousin dies. Couple months after that, a friend of mine blows his brains out. Couple weeks after that, um, a friend of mine dies sitting in Osceola, waiting on to get sentenced for the feds, and just all of this death, man. And so it started making me look at it. And I dated a girl, and she was on fentanyl, and she overdosed in my house. And you first get in ministry, and it's kind of like, man, your shoulders go back, your chest comes out, like I can save the world. And I believe we all believe that. Our intention is, man, I want to save the world. Man, it just kept on. People just kept dying. 2 years ago, actually this week, on August 21st of 23, my best friend, Derek Williams, came up missing. And which was weird because I kind of raised a kid. So I know, there's guys that you've got to go above and beyond to get to him. He comes up missing. His mom calls me and she says, Paul, I ain't heard from Derek. Well, that's a sign for me, right? And so I started knocking on doors, man. Like his car was somewhere, and I told him, man, where's he at? Well, we don't know. We don't know. He left his car here. Well, one thing I know about a dope fiend is they're not going to leave their car nowhere. They're not walking. Not they got a car, you know. And August 31st, I get a phone call. Hold up on getting them flyers made, because our plan was that Saturday, which would have been the next day, we was going to print a bunch of flyers, hang them up everywhere, and walk that neighborhood where his car was at. Got a call from somebody that probably shouldn't have called me and said, hold up before you put them signs up. We just found a body. And they found him out here on West Bypass and Division, by that car wash back there, that at the end of it in that tall grass. Used to be a salvage yard, and back just south of it. Well, he'd been laying in that tall grass for 10 days. And the people went in that morning and smelt him, and they called the police. Well, it was Derek. And, he was one of my lifetime best friends. And then a week later at that same time, my cousin, whose father got killed, I knew he was getting high in my house. And I wasn't really that mad about it. I just knew if he was there with me, I could kind of protect him. And, he stole my car one day while I was at work and wrecked it. When he got out of jail, I was mad. I kicked him out. And a week later, I walked in. That was a Friday. And the following Friday, I go home from work and lay down, and I get a phone call. They just pulled him out on a stretcher. He was dead. And, it absolutely crushed me. And God took that pain and turned it into purpose, because, on September 6th, that's what we're speaking about. We're talking about fentanyl. And I'm a lot different than a lot of people, man. I don't believe in Suboxones. I think we're trading one drug for another. And I know people will argue that with me. I won't argue it with them. I mean, I have a right to my opinion. And I don't believe, I've never took a substitute drug. Every drug that I've ever taken, it was meth. And when I quit, I quit. I don't need anything else. And so people get strung out on these Suboxones just like they do on the fentanyl. And so I've had people tell me that they had to use meth to get off Suboxones. And so, I mean, I don't know, like sometimes I want to ask the question, like, what are we doing? Is it that important for us to keep people under the influence of something? And so the more I get to see it, the more I see it, the more lives I see lost, the more people I see die from it, the more I know that somebody has to be willing to stand in the gap for them. And, you know, one thing we do at Living Proof, I know they come in there, they stink, they're high, they're drunk, they got drugs on them. But I've also seen people lay that stuff on the altar. And you know, the thing is, here's the thing is if Mark was to call me today and say, Paul, I don't think you should be doing that, it would mean something to me. But when other people say, Paul, you shouldn't be doing that. See, if you ain't got nothing invested in me, I'm probably not going to listen to you. And I always think about, these people down, these homeless guys at these gas stations. When was the last time you stopped and talked to one of them?
Yeah, long time.
See, because
I
here's,
have in the past. It's been a long time.
so, our motto at my church and at Living Proof is know a name, know a story. Because see, I believe that when you know somebody's name and you know somebody's story, you probably can love that person, man.
Yeah, you make a connection, right?
So what happens is we all have gas stations and stores that we frequent, that we
Yeah,
see people on the front steps and we walk right past them. And I had to ask myself, actually, Rocky taught me this before he died. He would walk out of a come and go and with a brand new pair of $200 tennis shoes on and see a homeless person sitting there without shoes and take them off and give them to him. And I would say, Rocky, what are you doing? And he would say, cousin, they needed them more than I did. So it made me start to question my own Christian walk. I wasn't even talking to people at that time. And so I started talking to them. And the first thing everybody says is, don't give them no money. Don't give them no money. They're going to get high. But God ain't going to judge me by whether or not I gave them money. See, because at the end of the day, God called me to love people. And so when I say, hey, how you doing? My name is Paul Choate. What's your name? Well, they'll tell you. And they'll say, will you give me some cigarettes or something to eat or whatever? Sure, come on, let's go. But see, now I know that his name is whatever, and he knows my name is whatever. And all he wanted was a soda. Thirsty, man. But guess what? He's going to say next time I pull up, he's going to say, hey, Paul. I'm going to say, hey, what's up, Billy? And he's going to say, how you doing? Well, now I'm going to shoot my shot and I'm going to say, man, you know what I do, right? I love getting people in programs and different places and this and that. See, then what happens is there's that day where you pull up and they say, hey, man, I'm ready. And we get to transport them to somewhere and get them some help.
connection's been made, and now they're on their terms.
Yeah.
They connect with you, and
And it's because a few sodas, a sandwich, you know what I mean?
yeah,
People don't realize it. And I'm always like, man, if Jesus was walking in that store, he'd stop and talk to him.
yeah. It's a good point, Paul. I think about why I stopped talking to some folks, and it was because I was getting aggravated at you're taking this money and you're buying alcohol, you're buying drugs, you're doing something that I don't want you to do. But you're right; it's more about making that connection, and because we're never going to force them to your church. We're never going to force them to treatment or whatever. It's. I mean, you can, but we see how statistically how well that works, right? I mean,
Yeah.
um,
I would trick
wow,
them to church. See, I believe that it's my job to trick them there. So, Big Boy Ministry out of Kabul, Missouri, they donated a van to us. And so when we go, we got a team that goes into homeless camps Saturday morning, right? And they'll go out and pass out waters and food and this and that and say, hey, we'll come back and get you and we'll bring you up here and we'll feed you a hot meal. You can sit in the air condition and, you ain't got to do nothing else. Just that's it. And they'll come and then next thing you know, 3 or 4 months down the line, they come in and they say, man, I got in a sober living program. And I'm always like, yes, that's what it's all about, man. But we got to start somewhere. It starts with us.
yeah, I love that. So let me recap this. 2017, right? Am I right on the time frame? Something turned you to God, and you didn't know how, you didn't know what that path would look like, but you knew that was your path, and ultimately it led you to church and ministry, and you're doing it weekly. You're visiting, like you said, the homeless areas, and you're just out there on the street hitting the pavement. You're putting your money where your mouth is, right? I mean, you're doing you're doing really good work. Wow.
Brian, I'm just going to be honest. There's days, man, where I sit in this office I get down on my knees and I cry and I say, God, why? Why have you, why me? And God continues to say, why not? Why not you?
So
And
even when you doubt it, or even when you're confused, it's why not you?
yeah, why? Why couldn't you use one of these other guys that's been doing this their whole life? God he doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called.
So
God does.
yeah.
And people think, man, and I tell Brooks and we talk about it all the time. It's like, dude, this stuff's brutal. It's nonstop for me. And I believe that all the pieces like this job, dude, I'd never sat in an office before. I'm a director of logistics. You know what I mean? Like I'm over a fleet of trucks and, and God put me in this position to do the ministry that I do outside of this place. I come in at 5 o'clock and usually get off at 1 o'clock every day. And
And the flip
so,
side of that is this work keeps you, I mean, no drugs, crime, prison. I mean, you're focused on helping people and see the same light you did.
my prayer has been, and I can be transparent. My prayer was never that God took my addiction away. I never one time prayed that because I don't believe that God does. I think about Job and everything Job went through and God never did anything, but he didn't take them pains away from Job until it was over with. And God don't take addiction away because he don't give it to you. However, the Bible's clear and Jesus says, look here, you can't do it, but I can do it with you. Trust me. And so we start to trust God in these moments. And my prayer for 2 years was this: God, please give me the strength to face people with a needle hanging out of their arm and not turn my stomach and make me want to use. And I've sit and seen duffel bags full of dope, piles of dope. And it does not turn my stomach. I do not have a desire. I'll never, I know they say it, but I'm going to say it. I'll never use drugs again. I'm 100% confident of that. And, I always tell Scott and them, man, why you guys didn't tell me about this Jesus thing? Scott's always been on me about it. He's really what's given me the direction, to just keep going, man. Like keep pursuing them, Paul. Don't give up on them. And I just, I don't know, people miss it, man. They want to give up. And when we look at a lot of people who overdose, what's the first thing that happens is the family turns their back on them. And
I was gonna say that. Yeah, go ahead.
and
You have
then,
all these important people.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And then what?
your family turns your back on you. Um, Now in your mind, nobody cares anyway. So
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
I'm just going to keep going because it don't matter. And it's a recipe for disaster is what it is.
I hear that a lot, and in contrast, now I see you, like I said, you don't have that craving, but you also have really powerful people in your life.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of them, Mark, Scott. I mean, you mentioned all these powerful influences that God put in your life.
My family, even, I can't, man, my parents love me, um, through every bit of this. I don't know what it would have been like for them to turn their back on me, man. And I think about, man, these kids, I'm done. I don't know what else to do. I mean, this is your child. What do you mean you don't know what else to do? And there's such a fine line between enabling, when my sister overdosed, I was the guy that I wouldn't even let her get in my car, man. And these things, they bother me because what if she'd call and say, I need food. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to bring it to you. I need cigarettes. Okay, I'm on my way. Let me get in. Nope. Because I know you got drug paraphernalia in your bag. Absolutely not. And, man, it won't happen again. God's taking all that and he's using it today. We're going to continue to move forward. We're going to continue to share God's grace. We're going to continue to share the dangers of, matter of fact, we are in the process of having a meeting right now with a senator about, whippet, kratom, tianeptine. Um, why are we selling this across the counter? It's gas station heroin, and it's legal, and it's just as bad as the stuff. So why are we? When do we go make our? It's time to say something. So my friend's daughter just died, man, and she had about, dude. I mean, the canisters was like this,
Yeah, it's disgusting.
about
It's
50 of them in her car. You sell a food
yeah, they're
product in a smoke shop.
no, it's horrible, and I don't know how they're legal. And number two is I don't know how these people can sleep at night just selling these products. Even I know they say, well, they're not legal. Well, is there any ethics? Is there any morals? I mean, what are you doing here? I mean, oh, that
For
just
a few
drives me
dollars.
nuts. For a few dollars, yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you a couple follow up questions. Someone that might hear this that's struggling, what what do you tell them?
Man, I say, man, go find somebody who you can talk to. If you're fresh out of it, if you've been out of it for a long time, don't wear the days like a badge of honor. One of the things I hate is when people say, man, I've only been clean 2 weeks. I hate that, because we've taught people that count the days, count the days. You'll be all right. When you get 10 years, you'll be right there. And it's not true, man. A person that's been clean 20 years can lose it as fast as a person with one. And if we're trusting the world to fix a problem that only God can fix, we're going to fail. And this is it. Stop using worldly resources and trust God.
Let me ask you this: someone who just wants to help, someone who just wants to make a difference, what would you tell him or her?
Man, I would say get plugged in with a local recovery ministry, man. Um, we all need help. And I'm gonna be biased, man. Come out to Living Proof and see what we do. Um,
What's the address?
It's 2216 West College. So we've got
Okay.
people that come in and they cook on Saturday. We got a van ministry. We got the camp ministry. We got all of these stuff that we do, and we do these outreaches. And I say, man, we're at 2216 West College, man, and we feed at 5:30 and we do service at 6, man. We've got an excellent live band. Andy Britton's there probably as much, if not more than me.
Yeah, and you have an event coming up too. I want to go ahead and that's September 4th,
6th.
6th,
Yeah.
Saturday, September
Yeah.
6th. And tell us what that is.
So we on September 6th, we'll pass out food from about 8 to noon. This year, we're going to do it a little different. Last year, we kept the front open. This year, we're shutting everything down up front. We're going to load it back up, and we'll go donate what's left to somewhere. And in the back, we'll have a stage, and we'll have a bunch of guest speakers and a lot of different ministries that, a lot of these people, man, they're assemblies of God. I don't want to do anything with them. We don't believe the same thing. And I say you're missing the mark. We all believe in the simple gospel that Jesus Christ that God come here in the form of man, and Jesus Christ was crucified and rose 3 days later. That's the simple gospel, man. All that other stuff, let's let Tony Evans and them argue it. It's not our job. And I
That's
think we're
right.
stronger together than we are apart. And so I call all these ministries out to come out, and we'll have a bunch of speakers, and we'll talk about some of this stuff. We'll have testimonies, we'll have free food and all that stuff, man. And so we love it. Last year they said 1,500 people came out.
Well, this has been enlightening. I didn't know I didn't know your whole history, and I knew a little bit about what you're doing now, but I didn't know everything, and learned a lot. And I think the other takeaway I would say for people is when you see those folks at the gas stations or in the street corners, maybe you don't have a couple dollars, but maybe you have a smile or something to make just even a small connection and let them
Yeah.
know that they're human and that they matter. Anything, Paul, anything I forgot to ask or anything that you want to talk about? I don't know,
I would,
anything you want to end
I
this with?
just say, man, when it comes to people, I always like to look at the gas station like a bank, right? And
Okay.
if you walk in a bank and you try to withdraw $10 and all you got is $7.50, they're not going to let you. You don't have that right. Well, if you don't say something to that person at the gas station, you don't have a right to say anything to them about their life. And it isn't until you invest in them, whether it's a soda, a conversation, or something, and you get on a first name basis. Know a name, know a story, man. When you know their name and you know their story, you have every right in the world, and you'll have you can be the person who says, "Man, when you're ready to do something different?" Because what they're going to listen to you because you've got an investment in them, whether it's just a 2-minute conversation or a 30-minute conversation. Make that investment, man. You know, God called us to do that, man. We're called to get out in the streets. We're called to make disciples, man. We're called to share the gospel. And if we're not, we're dropping the ball, man.
Wow. No, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, what you're doing, your time. That's incredible. And I think beyond just the gas stations, I mean, if we just made that connection with everyone in our lives, how much better would this world, how much more beautiful would this world be, right? I mean, well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate you. And
I appreciate you,
yeah,
and I always remember my question to everybody every day is this: if people around you don't know you, will they know that you're a Christian by the way you carry yourself?
carry yourself. Actions speak louder than words, right?
I promise you.
Well, thank you, and then thank the listeners for
Yeah,
for listening again. This is only 2MG Inside the Crisis. My name's Brian Townsend. This was Paul Choate, and this was an incredible conversation. I hope you like it, share it, and take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, and just be the change you want to see in this world.
there you go.